Ideological stance in content area instruction. I believe students should be the focus of instruction and not the products of it. I believe a teacher's job is to shape assessment in order to increase learning, and knowledge is the product of student interest and engagement. So this is the definition that I shared in class the other day. It sounds a bit wordy and lofty, so let me break it down. Let's start with my first point. Students should be the focus and not products. You may or may not agree that there's a climate crisis going on at the moment. You may hear people say, oh, well, if the earth is warming, then why is it so cold? Well, not everything's obvious to each observer. Whether you feel it or not, there is a crisis. So let's compare that to our education system. You may not feel it, but there definitely is a problem. It has the same origins, I would contend, as global warming, and we need to deal with it. Sir Ken Robinson compares global warming and the education crisis, noting that we make very poor use of our talents. He says we have two global resource crises, one to do with wasting of natural resources, and the other to do with a wasting of the resource of human talent. Many people go through their lives these days without thinking they're very good at anything. Students simply endure school. They go through school and their lives just enduring them. Our educational system is undergoing a worldwide reform right now to try to address some of these issues, but there's a whole multitude of institutional shortcomings, and it just isn't enough. He says we need a revolution, not a reformation. The education system is treating people like products. It uses the factory model from the Industrial Revolution, where humans are trained in batches based on manufacture date and shuffled along through standardized tests and curriculum targets in order to get students to one place, to graduation, as soon as possible. This system is as damaging to students as the process of industrialized monoculture mass production agriculture is to the ecosystem, or industrial production is to the natural resources they consume, and the environments they're consumed in. We need to shift to a student-focused pedagogy that doesn't treat all students the same, because they're not the same. We have built our educational model on the same model we use for fast food. Okay, compare McDonald's, which standardizes everything, with a Michelin star restaurant like La Bernadette. They are not standardized. Michelin star restaurants are not standardized. They use customized and local circumstances. They use local seasonal ingredients in creative ways. Standardization in education impoverishes our future as much as fast food impoverishes our physical bodies. We need to move from a manufacturing model of education to a more organic approach. In an organic model, we would create the conditions under which a student might flourish, personalize education to the people you are actually teaching. It's about creating a movement in education in which people develop their own solutions, but with external support based on personalized curriculum. It should be individual, and it should be about passion. If you're doing something you love, you want to keep doing it. You want to become a master at it. You dedicate your life to it. As a teacher, our role should be to create conditions where students can find and grow their passions in a guided, scaffolded way, in a structured way. Think of that word for a second, grow. We are organisms that grow, physically, of course, and mentally throughout our lifespan. A 10-year-old isn't half of a 20-year-old. Our brains undergo profound changes during development. What we're ready to learn and understand will change dramatically from year to year. Our neurophysiological development as students continues to progress. We do grow. Now, part of this assignment is to discuss learning theory, to tie our ideological stance to learning theory. For rubric's sake, I will say that for style, I most closely identify with constructivism, since I believe all sensory input is organized by the person receiving that stimuli and cannot be transferred directly into a student. Essentially, we use lenses to understand the world around us, and those lenses are constructed products of prior learning and sociocultural programming. We should aim, therefore, for higher order cognitive skills like analyzing and predicting. build off student responses in constructing pedagogy and reflecting on practice. Encourage critical thinking and critical inquiry by speaking mainly in questions and encouraging students to ask each other questions. Provide time for students to construct their own meaning when learning something new and give them opportunities to teach that new information to their peers. But all that being said, I feel we should not use learning theory to inform lesson design, nor should we attempt to justify learning by linking it to learning theory. In my mind, this is backwards scientific method. This is because all types of learning are justifiable by any learning theory. A learning theory is essentially a lens that is used to describe the same co-varying and extremely personally generated traits that each person brings to their learning by taking a sample, which we know can only ever truly represent those it sampled from, and attempting to generalize those results to create a model and then to further inform a generalized theory of learning. The reason why there's no single theory of learning and always will be camps that vie for consideration as the current go-to model of understanding of learning is because they're all partially right and partially wrong. If we do away with trying to create lessons around learning types and linking to learning theories and focus on individual student needs, we would be moving in the right direction. We need to move from a manufacturing model of education to a more organic approach. An organic model, we would create the conditions under which a student might flourish. Personalize education to the people we are actually teaching. It's about creating a movement in education in which students develop their own solutions, but with external support and based on personalized curriculum. I believe that new media literacy skills are an essential component of that individualized learning. Incorporating relevant, useful skills into lessons that are developed to call upon students' funds of knowledge and create personalized learning pathways for each student to fully develop and share and refine elements of their specific passions within a culture of participation. That's how I want to pursue my practice. When designing my unit of study, I used the Wiggins and Mattei backwards planning model to move from big idea to essential question and then link to core content standards, etc. But I took a slightly different approach. I wanted to take the opportunity to link my big idea to a new media literacy strategy. I wanted to start from the very beginning, creating a literacy approach to my instructional design. After developing the questions, I wanted to create a final product that, rather than being an assessment, a final assessment, I wanted the product to be flexible enough that each student could bring their own passions to it and express themselves fully through a form of new media. Part of the challenge of this approach was the planning. It takes a lot of work to structure a class in such a way that you can be more like a farmer than a factory foreman. I want to give students the tools they need to grow in their own ways and correct issues as they arise, but to generally be able to step back and keep the focus on the students. I want to avoid generating standard answers and forcing the students to respond to those. I want to avoid wasting my time telling students what to know, and instead focusing on teaching students skills that allow them to practice those skills under supervision within tasks that are designed as a process pedagogy that allows us to output a product that's aligned with real-life things. Process is an important consideration. Everyone will take a different path to mastery, but there will be certain skills everyone needs to acquire along the way. A teacher should be the one who provides access to the information those skills require to develop and scaffold the understanding. I believe student understanding is a gestalt in nature, and it's worth more than the measure of its parts. Learning should be individual, passion-driven, connected prior and future learning. Learning is growth.